So Celebration Sunday. One of the reasons we do this is to make sure we remind ourselves that celebrating is as much a part of worship as any other form of worship that there is in the world. But in addition to that, after we did our series about Let the Truth Be Told, and we came to this conclusion that truth is love in action, and that if we use love in action as our guide, if we use it as the guide for our own actions, for looking at the behavior of others, when other people talk, whether we're in our own bubbles in Facebook or whether we are out listening to newscasts, if we use this measure of love in action, it will steer us in the right direction. So we want to take the time to say, how are we doing with this? Spoiler alert, it's good. Or this wouldn't be part of a Celebration Sunday sermon, it would be a different sermon. But in addition to that, we are called through the scriptures to celebrate. Listen to the action words that Leslie just read. I will extol you, meaning I will shout out and stand up and publicly just say how wonderful you are. I will bless you, praise you. One generation shall do this so that the others will know. We will proclaim, we will declare, we will celebrate, sing aloud. And then it says, the Lord is good to all, and his compassion is over all that God has made. Except there's one translation that says, God's compassion is intertwined with everything. That God's actions and God's people and God's everything is intertwined, that we are all dependent on one another, even those of us who will never meet each other. And so it's important to see how we are doing in taking that action and doing that thing, that intertwined thing that recognizes that we are all connected, and how we help make this place better right here and right now. So we're going to talk about some things that we do within our community of faith, for our community of faith, and the things we do when we just go outside the walls of this place, which this community of faith is so good at doing. And I want to start with our parish care team, because we have the best parish care team anywhere. Right? First of all, everybody, knowing this congregation now for 3 years, you're all involved in parish care because you all care about each other, and you're all working to help each other. But our dedicated parish care team wrote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters to people in the congregation to help people feel connected, or when something was going wrong, to let them know that they were being thought of and cared for. And then got on the phone and called people hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And did FaceTime, whether it was on an iPhone or an iPad or on a computer. Brought dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of flowers to people who couldn't get out to come get them. And then went to people who couldn't leave their homes or couldn't leave their places where they were living, but went up to the windows to say hello so that people knew they were not alone. When you add up all this, it was thousands of contacts that the parish care team and other people here made in reaching out to help people feel connected in a time when we were more isolated than ever. This matters. Then the Child Development Center. You might look at this understandably in these days and think CDC, Center for Disease Control, right? The obvious reference. But here, Child Development Center. And what's this zero kind of null set thing there for? A year ago, in July, we made the decision to open the Child Development Center for students to come back in. Not just to do it online like we had been for a while, but to have children come back in. Now, there was a lot of pushback on that because people said, is it going to be safe? Remember, this is months and months and months before any vaccines and stuff like that. This zero represents the fact that those teachers, the people who ran this, did such a good job. There was not a single case of COVID in the entire school for the entire year. That is remarkable, remarkable accomplishment. But then on the other side, if this is zero, there were countless other things that were just happening in terms of the education, in terms of books read, in terms of care given, in terms of learning, in terms of showing children how to behave and interact in a way that is lovely and loving. I have the blessing to be able to see this every day. The children here are so joyful. And that's because the teachers make it a joyful, caring place for them to be. We have some other stuff. Social justice. While we need to continue to do more in this area, we really began to step out and dig in working on social justice. In the Black Lives Matter movement, we invested in the mural that is out there by the town hall. And then we invested substantially also in this new mural that's going up on Juneteenth. In addition to that, we got out of the building and went to the events that the town and others organized. What I'm proud of is when we go to these events, there is a disproportionate number of people who come from this community of faith to these events. I'm not saying we're the majority, because we're not as big as some of these other places, but in terms of the percentage of people, we have a lot of people who go to these events because you know it matters, and it matters to have us show up and people to see us there. And when people see that, then they think about our church, and then they call me and ask me to speak. That's getting out there, and it only happens if all of you are a part of that. But also, in addition to going out, we needed to work inside. And despite COVID, we continued the sacred conversations towards ending racism, talking about white privilege, talking about history, talking about what things are and what things aren't, having awkward, difficult conversations that are painful to go through, so a lot of people avoid them, and we said, no, we're not going to avoid them, we're going to go right through them. And were some of those conversations uncomfortable? Darn right they were. But they were important. And we're becoming a better community of faith because of that. And then with the LGBTQ plus community, there were a number of times where other religious leaders put them squarely under attack. We refused to let that stand, and so from this pulpit, from outside, we made sure people knew where this community of faith stood. It's not enough to vote and to be an open and affirming community of faith. You have to live that out. And so we lived that out. And we're going to be doing more. As I said, tomorrow there's going to be the first raising of a pride flag in Bloomfield. First time ever. And when they began to organize that, the first phone call came here to this church asking if they could use this building for their meetings because they knew this was a safe place where they could come together. And then they asked if we as a community of faith, if I would lead the opening of that ceremony. We can do more, but getting out on issues of social justice is so important because people's lives are at stake. People's dignity is at stake. People who aren't able to be who they are because they feel like they need to pretend to be something else. Then that leads to something else, and their lives is out of control, and they try to find some control. And it doesn't always lead to a place where everybody is going to feel good. We can help change that. We have an obligation to help change that. So we're doing fine, but we're going to do more. Then the COVID clinics. We worked with health leaders and town leaders to coordinate an interdenominational series of COVID clinics here in Bloomfield. And yes, it was wonderful. We had over 100 people get both doses of their vaccination here in this church. It was amazing to watch our fellowship hall converted to a medical facility where this was taking place. But if you were here for it, what you would see is the vast majority of people who came were not from our congregation, because that was the point. To have a lot of our people go to other churches to get the vaccination, to have other people come to our church, because the message was, knowing that some groups of people would be more hesitant, understandably hesitant, to get the vaccine, to say, we are going to go to each other's places and show that we are all taking the same vaccine. Because the health leaders said, you know what, sometimes people will listen to their pastors over their doctors. And if you do it together and you show you're all getting the same vaccine, that will matter. And that mattered more than just getting the number of people vaccinated. That's building community, that's working across communities of faith that sometimes have severe disagreements and finding how can we make the community better. This helped people. It definitely kept people healthier. It might have saved lives. And then the 1,000 mask ministry. We thought the 1,000 masks was a pretty ambitious target till we blew through that to 1,500, then 2,000. And as we're wrapping up the program, we just crossed 3,000 masks given to the community. Now, a lot of people in this community of faith sewed masks and gave masks. But what also happened is when we started to do this, when people started to see all the masks strung between the pillars of our church out there for anybody to take, some people who didn't need masks just felt hope. That there were people out there who cared about others. When the masks were out there, people who took the masks were so grateful. And it's also a reminder for us when they're up there that those of us who can get them easily, a lot of people can't. A lot of people can't. This 3,000 masks made people healthier and probably saved lives. That gives people hope when they know that someone who they don't go to their church is just out there saying, we want to help the community, we want to help you. It gives people hope, and that builds community, and community is so important in times of crisis. Because if there's no community in times of crisis, people splinter. When there's community, when there's a crisis, people come together. And so in addition to anything behind what we do, the underlying objective is to build community so that we come together when things are hard. In addition to that, we have an amazing missions team. An amazing missions team that looks broadly to make sure we're focused on looking at places that are local that need to be supported, nationally and internationally, to keep us mindful of not just being right here, but also the different places that we need to keep our eyes open for needs in the world. For children, there were all kinds of ways that our missions team supported children. One, they provided 4 scholarships to graduating high school students to go to trade school, to go to community college, to go to 4-year colleges. In addition to that, you may recall back at Christmas, a lot of churches and a lot of other nonprofits shut down their toy drives. Judy said, that's not what we're going to do. Missions team said, that's not what we're going to do. It's like, we need to do more, Pastor. I'm like, yes, more, Xander. Right? Exactly, more. See, this is how it passes from one generation to the other, right? Just like that. And so we said, all right, we've got to do at least twice as many as we did the year before. And we put that announcement out to the congregation. And then we announced it out on Facebook and out into the community, and the community started to send toys and send money. By the time we were done, we did 5 times more the number of toys that we do on a typical Christmas. And that had $1,000 extra to donate to the WTIC 96.5 Toy Drive for Children. That's taking care of children at a time that otherwise it would have been a very difficult thing for them. And these are just examples. Then other people who are vulnerable. My sister's place is a remarkable shelter in the greater Hartford area for battered women, people who are threatened, and their children. The missions team supports that place and a half dozen other ones. In addition to that, they sent checks to Navajo Nation for COVID help. And sent checks to India because we know that's a place where there's a huge crisis for COVID as well. And a mission for women who are vulnerable in Kenya. keeping our sights in different places. Then we have the Prosser Fund. It takes care of people who live in Bloomfield who are 60 years or older, who are just getting by, and if one event, a tree falls on their house, or an electric thing happens, or something just unexpected happens, their boiler fails, works with social services to identify people who have those needs, and then funds that money up to $3,000. That changes people's lives, from the children to women to the elderly. And then the pastor's discretionary fund, which allows me, when there's an immediate crisis, to help give someone housing when they don't have it, to help someone who wasn't going to be able to go back to work because they couldn't afford the child care, for us to be able to support their child care for a month, to help bridge that gap. Someone who was going to have to give their dog away because they couldn't afford the food, and we bought the food for a period of time to bridge that gap. There are stories upon stories upon stories, and we'll share those sometime. But this work matters, and you all donated to make these things happen. This year alone, not since COVID, but this year alone, from July 1st through the end of June, no, not at the end of June, but we can project the numbers, 2,500 bags of groceries given through the backpack program this year. And when we couldn't do it through the regular ways that we did it, we coordinated through social services and then worked with Old St. Andrews, one of our partners, to have bags delivered. To have bags delivered to people who didn't have the transportation or couldn't otherwise come get that. That's building community. And then we started getting checks from Sacred Heart, from Old St. Andrews, from the Bloomfield Methodist Church, from First Church Glastonbury Congregational, sending to support the programs here because they know about what we are doing. And then this number just blows me away. This one does too. This number blows me away. This year, the community kitchen, the Bloomfield Community Kitchen, served 18,000 meals worth of food. 18,000. Now, you may have seen, if you got your year in review, a number 20,000. That was since the beginning of COVID, over 20,000 meals served. But in this year alone, 18,000. Now, when you value these things, some people have different estimates for what the retail price of what goes in here is. Some people say $35, some say $40, some say it's much more than that. I use the most conservative figure possible on this, $30. That's $75,000 worth of groceries at a minimum that was given away. Here, these are valued at least at $10 a piece with what's given. That's $180,000 worth of food given into the community. And then $47,000 here. This is the money beyond our regular pledging that this community of faith and other community leaders and people outside of our community of faith just started writing checks to the pastor's discretionary fund, to the backpack program, to the community kitchen, and other things, and grants that we're getting. And now, for the first time, we were just awarded a grant from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. That is a major league foundation. They don't give grants to organizations they don't think are going to be around for a long time, everybody. That aren't going to be doing great things for a long time. They don't give money to places they don't think are doing great things and are going to be around for a long, long time. Oh, and by the way, we also had Sunday services every week, and we had Bible study, and we sent our Faith Formation director on snowmobiles and hot air balloons and all over the state in different places, and we had great music from Eustace playing the organ and also keeping us out of prison, because when you get music online, it's not as straightforward as saying, I like that song, I'm going to put that up there. No. You start doing that the wrong way, and all of a sudden they just shut your stream down. Eustace has kept us going with that music for well over a year, and that's not an easy thing to do. All these, and we did all this kind of stuff. And I know dollars aren't all that there is, but I think it is important because we went through the details here, but I think sometimes seeing this matters. 2 years ago, this community of faith increased its investment into the community, increased the benefits into the community from $56,000 to $113,000. Then, you went from $113,000 to $226,000 last year. Now, during COVID, you would expect this number now to go down. Most churches didn't just kind of close in terms of worship, but they closed. The pastor stayed home. Right? We didn't close. The missions shifted or stopped. Other nonprofits stopped. As the mayor said, you all leaned into this. Stepped forward, found ways to make it safe, made commitments to each other to keep yourself safe in the bubble with both the backpack program and the community kitchen. And when you add up all the different ways, all the different programs that we went through, this is what this community of faith did. Went from $226,000 worth of benefit into the community to $332,000 of community investment. But our whole pledge amount is only like $228,000. How's that possible, Pastor? Because of building relationships and leveraging places like Food Share. Maria found us a new program called TFAP that was offered that was never utilized before by previous groups running this program. That took the cost down to almost nothing. To almost nothing. So when we said there was $75,000 plus that went in there, it doesn't mean we needed to raise $75,000. And my question is, would it have meant any more if we raised $75,000 and spent $75,000? Or would you rather get food for free and get it out into the community and get $75,000 of benefit without that? Which one do you like better? I know what Scott likes better. These relationships, when you build community and people see what you're doing, you have leaders like Maria to help us find these ways, can make that happen. The community kitchen. Does it make any difference whether we would have had to invest $180,000 of our own money to do that kind of thing? Or is it better that we have a relationship with Food Share that allows us to do that for 10 cents on the dollar? Those kind of relationships, that kind of work, people see it, and then the town sees it, and the town didn't have a relationship with Food Share because they weren't big enough. Think about that. That's how much food we're doing. We have enough volume that we have a relationship with Food Share, and the town of Bloomfield doesn't have a relationship with Bloomfield or with Food Share. They have that through us now. We committed our 501c3 status to Food Share, to Bloomfield, town of Bloomfield, to work through us to help other people get food as well. This multiplication, this number, if people want to know what a modern day miracle looks like, it's that. It's that. It's in a period of time of COVID, of us increasing more than $100,000 our impact on the community. That's the movement of the Holy Spirit, and that is the movement of one of the most amazing communities of faith that I have ever had the blessing to be a part of. So thank you. I celebrate you. I celebrate what the Holy Spirit is doing, what God is doing with us, but I celebrate you for making a difference in this community and in this world. And the thing is, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. Don't believe that's the end. That's just the trajectory. We're just getting started. And so now, We had this phrase and something when I came here, and I know Pastor Ed had it as well, that the best is yet to come. Well, one of the musicians that we had the opportunity to meet, originally from Australia and now from Nashville, a well-known Grammy-nominated artist, Paul Coleman, has a song that he wrote called The Best Is Yet to Come. Well, he